Right, hi guys, it is Dan here, and last month for the first time I did like a wrap up / TBR video, and it was quite fun to reminisce about the books that I'd read, and it was also quite fun, you know, picking out what books I was going to read for that month. I don't really normally do that. I normally do them one at a time, but actually it was quite good having the pile and working through it, so I'm going to carry on with this. So, without further ado, let's talk about the books that I read in the month of, what month was it? May? Yeah, the month of May. Right, the first one was a continuation of my reread of Bernard Cornwell's Last Kingdom series, which is Anglo-Saxon historical fiction, the reign of King Alfred and his descendants, and it was The Empty Throne. So I'm getting quite close to the end of my reread of the series, and you know, oh, by the way, all the books that I've read this month, you can see reviews. I've put reviews up of all of them, so you can check them out if you want. But yeah, this one is a continuation of that series. It's as action-packed as ever. You know, there's the normal, you know, warfare with the Vikings, but this one is sort of more political in nature than some of the other ones, because what's going on basically is Ethelred, the ruler of Mercia, is dying, so there's a lot of political manoeuvring to see who is going to be his successor, and we follow Uhtred of Bebbanburg, who's his Saxon warlord, as he negotiates this sort of, you know, sea of political manoeuvring. So yeah, as always, this is one of my favourite series. If you haven't read it, read it. It's great. Right, the next books I'm going to talk about, I might as well talk about all three of them together because they're the first three books in a series. It is some more Anglo-Saxon historical fiction. It's been a very Anglo-Saxon heavy month for me. And that is the Benicia Chronicles by Matthew Harffy. And they've got the first book, The Serpent Sword. The second book is The Cross and the Curse. And the third book is called Blood and Blade. And as you can tell probably from the titles, this is more sort of action heavy historical fiction. It's in the third person rather than the first person, which the Last Kingdom series are. And superficially, there are a lot of comparisons that you can make between the Benicia Chronicles and the Last Kingdom, which is one of the reasons why I picked it up in the first place. And yeah, there are these similarities, or at least surface similarities, but there is a lot of difference as well, right? So this is set 200 years earlier than the Last Kingdom series, and you do really get a sense of it being a different time period from Harffy's writing. Also, the main character, I thought the main character was very interesting in this. It's pretty much, it's a bit of a subversion of the sort of genre trope, or this, you know, sub-genre action-packed historical fiction trope. Normally in this kind of book you get, you know, your super macho warrior who's the main character, and in this you do have that. You've got Beerbrand, who is an action, you know, macho warrior figure, but he's very much more questioning of the morality of his lifestyle than you would normally get, and I really liked that. So yeah, overall I definitely enjoyed all of these three books. I think the first one, you can see that Matthew Harffy is like a new writer. There's a few little things that you're just like, that could have been better, but it's still a really good book. But the second one, you know, you can really see how he's learned and matured as a writer. It's good to see that development through the books, and I will definitely carry on with this series. I'm not sure when, because I don't own any of the other books, but I'm definitely going to carry on with it. Right, the next book that I read was a really good one, or at least I thought, well, I certainly thought it was really good, and that is The Slow Regard of Silent Things by Patrick Rothfuss, and it's like a really short 150-page novella based in the same world as his epic fantasy series, The Kingkiller Chronicles, and it follows a week in the life of one of the sort of minor characters from that series, Ori, who's this young woman who, you know, certainly doesn't fit into normal society. She lives in the sort of underground passages underneath the University of Magic in this world, and she's super mysterious and enigmatic and just really endearing and charming as well, though. So it's really nice to get some more page time with her character, and I think this book gets very mixed reviews from people. Some people really don't get it, they don't like it, and that's fair enough, right? I really did like it, though. I am definitely in that camp. So if you want to hear more about that and why, then check out the review. But yeah, it's got Patrick Rothfuss's normal, you know, beautiful, elegant writing style, even more so than in the novels, I think, which is one of the main reasons I like it. But also, I think it's a real thinker as well. It appears like not a lot goes on, but if you think about the significance of what Ori's doing through her terms, I think it reveals a lot about the series, and possibly what's going to come in the third book when and if it finally comes out. So yeah, highly recommended by me. If you like Patrick Rothfuss's work in general, then definitely check this one out. And the last physical book that I read this month is the first book in a sort of classic epic fantasy series called Memory, Sorrow and Thorn. It is The Dragonbone Chair by Tad Williams, and I thought this was another really good read. Very happy that I read this book. It's been sitting on my shelf for months and I just haven't picked it up. I think because it's just like a beast. It's like 900 pages long. But after a slightly slow start, it really turns into, yeah, great classic fantasy. There's a lot of tropes in here, so if you don't like, you know, the sort of kitchen boy becomes sorcerer's apprentice, or the Dark Lord, or the feisty princess, or whatever, there's a ton of tropes in here. If you don't like tropey stuff, you won't like this. But I don't mind a trope if it's done well, and I thought they were done really well in this. He's a very self-aware writer, he's a very intelligent writer, and he certainly understands the fantasy genre. So yeah, if you like classic epic fantasy and you haven't read this, then it would definitely be worth your while reading it. So that's all the physical books that I read this month, and as you can tell, it was like a pretty good month in terms of my enjoyment of what I've read. There's not a single book there that I didn't like, and hopefully that continues into next month. The audiobooks that I listened to, number one, actually no, the other one was first. Yeah, the first audiobook I listened to last month was A Clash of Kings. I did like an audiobook vlog about this. And I did enjoy this. I didn't enjoy it as much as reading the physical version, because I think on audiobook it's just so long. It might be like 70 or 80 hours of audiobook. So even if you're listening to it on 1.5 speed, that's still like 50, 60 hours. So that's a huge time commitment. And for me, and you know, you've got to spread it out over days and days and days. Certainly I can't blast through an audiobook as quickly as I can get through a physical book, and so it did feel like a bit of a slog at points, particularly with some of the characters who aren't going through such interesting stuff. You know, Catelyn, I guess her chapters and Sansa's chapters weren't so interesting, but then, you know, when you've got Tyrion or Arya or someone like that, or just characters that I prefer, you know, then it was good. But not as good as the physical book. So I reckon, you know, if you haven't read the what is it, Song of Ice and Fire series, for me, definitely go for the physical books over the audiobooks. But I am going to carry on with it because I just want to reread them all. And yeah, the audiobooks, I can do it in my time when I can't do the physical reading. So, you know, like when I'm at work and stuff. But it was kind of the other way around with this next audiobook, and that is the first book in the first Lore trilogy, which is a bit of a tongue twister, and it's called The Blade Itself, and it's by Joe Abercrombie. And this, I thought I actually appreciated more as an audiobook, mainly because the narrator does two of my favourite characters from this series really well. That is Logan Ninefingers, who's this sort of like barbarian guy, and you know, barbarian warrior, berserker type guy, and Inquisitor Glocta, who is this really cool character. He's like an inquisitor, a torturer. He's been tortured himself in the past, and yeah, I mean, basically the characters in this are really good. The narrator does those two really well, and they're two of my favourites, so that really helped my enjoyment of it. But overall, the character work in this book is fantastic. It's a reread for me, as all the audiobooks I'm listening to are. And yeah, for me, this series, it's the only Abercrombie series I've read, but it's the epitome of character-driven, grim, dark fantasy. So if you like that and you haven't read this, you should, for sure. So that's all the books I have read or listened to in May. And so on to what I'm currently reading, and that is in physical form anyway. As you can see, I've got my bookmark in there. That is Warriors of the Storm by Bernard Cornwell, which is the next book in the Last Kingdom series. I'm continuing on with my reread of that, and yeah, I'm pretty close to the end of it actually. One more chapter left, I think, and very much enjoying it. In this one, Bernard Cornwell kind of departs from historical events, as he does occasionally through this series, and just, you know, makes up his own story set in those times with these characters. So what I find with those books in the series is they have a more sort of internally coherent, self-contained plot that he's not having to pull together from loads of different primary sources. So yeah, it makes it a bit of it's a nice change of narrative structure in the series. It kind of breaks it up a little bit. But yeah, I will be putting out a review of this when I've finished it, so you can check that out if you want. No need to talk too much more about that. No need to talk too much about this one either. It is the audiobook that I am currently listening to, and it is the next book in The Song of Ice and Fire, Storm of Swords. Yeah, continuing my reread of that, or at least my re-listen to. It's even bigger than Clash of Kings. This is half of it, because it's split into two in the box set that I've got. And yeah, I'm halfway through it, so probably this much through it, and there's this much left to go. So yeah, I am enjoying it. It's just long. Right, so moving on to what I am planning to read in the month of June. And again, I've only chosen 4 books here, which I imagine I'll be able to get through. But they are a bit longer, or at least some of them are a bit longer than some of the ones on my TBR for last month. So it's a bit more ambitious, but still well within the realms of what I can reasonably achieve. And these are in no particular order. I'm gonna read them this month, but I don't know which one I'm gonna read first or whatever. But yeah, so more Bernard Cornwell. This is the last book that I own in the Last Kingdom series, so this will complete my reread, or at least the ones that I have. And it's called The Flamebearer. So yeah, I remember big events in this one, so I'm looking forward to getting onto this book and to completing my reread of the Last Kingdom series. Right, next up we've got another reread for me actually, and this is The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch, which is like a fantasy novel. It follows some really great characters, and it's like a heist novel, and it's in a sort of I guess maybe Renaissance Venice kind of setting, although, you know, it's a fantasy world, but that's the sort of vibe that you get from it anyway. I really enjoyed it the first time I read it. The reason I want to reread it is because I recently bought the second one in the series, and it's been so long since I read this one that I just wanted to refresh my memory of the series before I moved on to the second book. I probably wouldn't have to do that. Also, I haven't put a review of this up because it was before I started doing book reviews, and I would feel weird about putting a review up of the second book in the series without reviewing the first one, but that's just my weirdness. So yeah, Lies of Locke Lamora, Scott Lynch. The next one that I'm going to read, these are the ones that I'm going to read in physical form anyway, by the way, the ones that I've gone through so far. And the next one is, quite excited about this one, it's the first book in the Live Ship Traders trilogy by Robin Hobb. It's called Ship of Magic, and this is the second trilogy in a larger series that she's done called The Realm of the Elderlings, I believe. I've read the first trilogy recently, and really, really enjoyed that. It's like epic fantasy. But I think this follows like completely different characters. It's just based in the same world, this second trilogy. And also I think it's written in the third person rather than the first person, which the other one was in. So slightly different experience reading it, I guess. But we'll see how Robin Hobb's writing style translates into, you know, a slightly different setting and a slightly different writing style. I'll be very interested to see. I have heard very good things about it though, so I'm very much looking forward to starting this one. It's a bit of a mammoth though, so this is another one like the Dragonbone Chair that is like pretty much 900 pages long almost. Right, and the final book on my physical TBR for the month of June. There's a couple of audiobooks as well, but this is the first book in one of my probably, you know, joint with the Last Kingdom series. This is one of my favourite historical fiction series of all time. I'm very excited about rereading this. I've been looking forward to getting onto it for a while. I just wanted to finish the Last Kingdom before I started it, and that is Killer of Men. That's what the book's called, by Christian Cameron, and it's the first book in his Long War series, which is about the Greco-Persian wars in the classical period, the Greek classical period. And I mean, it's pretty much it's very similar in terms of the, you know, subgenre of historical fiction to the Last Kingdom series, where you're following it's first person. You're following one guy who is a warrior, so he's involved in all the major, you know, battles and stuff of the period. What I really like about Christian Cameron's writing is, first of all, the main character, a guy called Arimnestos, is really well done. He's a really enjoyable character to read. Also, Christian Cameron is really into the period that he's writing about. He knows loads about it. If you go on his website, he does like historical reenactments and stuff as well, where, you know, he really knows what he's writing about when he's talking about, or as close as you can, when he's talking about the experience of the sort of a lot of the day-to-day stuff, because he will actually go there and do these reenactments. I'm not saying he knows what it's like to fight in a Greek hoplite battle or anything, but he knows what it's like to wear the armor and to carry the spears, and he does like some sort of, he does like the martial arts from the period and stuff like that. So yeah, a very in-depth perspective on it from Christian Cameron, and also he just writes a damn good book. So I mean, yeah, he's absolutely one of my favourite authors. So I definitely recommend anyone who likes this kind of historical fiction, you know, like the Last Kingdom series, or anyone who's into ancient Greek history, for sure read this series. It's really good. Right, then in terms of audiobooks, basically it's carrying on with the series that I'm into at the moment. So yeah, the second book in the first Law trilogy is called Before They Are Hanged, you know, by Joe Abercrombie. Don't need to say too much more about that. Yeah, yeah, looking forward to getting onto that. And then the next book in A Song of Ice and Fire is A Feast for Crows. Again, probably don't need to say too much about that. I've already discussed this series. So yeah, there we are. That's what I've read. That's what I'm intending to read. I hope you enjoyed that. Please comment on these books if you've read them, if you're interested in them. If you've got any suggestions for me or book recommendations based on any of these books, I'd love to hear them. And I guess goodbye until next time.